Sky Squad, we are back in the building. Of course, we are going to be talking about this new interview that Bethenny Frankel did with Nene Leakes on her Just Be with Bethenny podcast. Now, I don't know if you guys follow this podcast or not, but what I will tell you is that it is a great listen. If you have about 3 hours, okay? Because it's broken down into two parts, very similar to Carlos King's sit down with Nene Leakes as well. Just wanted to mention that. I almost get the sense that after Bethenny, because she clearly saw the interview with Carlos and maybe saw the numbers that it did, that in tandem with this reality reckoning that she is, promoting right now, I think that because she reveals that she had been wavering about having this conversation for some time, I think that because of all of those circumstances working together, she decided to pull the trigger on this. Now, this is not the first time that Nene and Bethenny were supposed to work together, but we will get into that further. Again, this is a great listen. I highly suggest you go and listen to the entire thing. They do cover some of the same things that Nene touched on in her interview with Carlos, but there are many things that are new. And while I took notes on the entire 3 hours, I'm going to break down this discussion into the highlights so that we can kind of just keep the discussion centered on those things. There's a lot that's interesting, and there's a lot that I wrote down. So I really had to go back through and parse down what I felt like was really noteworthy for us to have a discussion about, a meaningful discussion. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do so. We would definitely appreciate the love and support. So just come along on the ride for us. And again, if you are expecting a hit it and quit it style video, I do not do those. I like to get into the weeds and into the nitty gritty. I like to talk. That's what we're here for. I did not come to dance for y'all. I came to do commentary about the topics that we love to talk about. Okay. So if that's what your expectation is, then I would just suggest you grab a cup of coffee, grab some tea, lay on down and listen. All right. So a lot of this came about in terms of this reality reckoning. All right. And this discussion with Nene and Bethenny is from the memo that came out from NBC Universal talking about some of the ways in which they are changing the dynamics and the measures that they're putting into place for reality television stars. We talked about this earlier this week. Actually, we talked about it. It was on the TV Deets Instagram page, and I will just pull that up for you guys so you guys can see it. And of course, it will be linked down in the description down below. But we actually discussed it earlier this week. It was a memo obtained by Deadline, basically that NBC Universal is mandating production companies to monitor alcohol consumption, provide additional mental health support, and implement more serious consequences for physical violence on their shows, right? So we did discuss that. Now, this conversation, they reference that, and they reference the fact that, the things that Nene and Bethenny are both saying are indeed having some effect. Nene, for her part, felt like, whoever is able to get the win is whoever is able to get the win, whether it was, she's been saying these things for a while, but people are finally listening now that it's Bethenny. And Bethenny's also speaking about reality TV on a more global perspective, whereas Nene was really speaking about a specific, situation that really mostly regarded her own issues with the network, the production company, Andy Cohen, and all that, right? They also recognize that Nene, as a Black woman, is going to have a completely different experience than Bethenny as a white woman. Let me just go ahead and get that. They dive into that several times throughout this interview, but I will say, it's more of a conversation, but I really wanted to acknowledge that right at the beginning of this, right? They dive a lot into Nene's upbringing, which I liked because I do feel like, it's one thing I feel like for Bethenny to have her on there and then really to just discuss, the hot topics that we all want to talk about. But what I did appreciate was that she felt the need to really dive into Nene's past and to really understand how, Nene growing up with her aunt and not her mom, and then, having an uncle who was an alcoholic, how all of these things affected her. They talked about, Nene, how she got into dancing, to help her as a single mother, pay for the things that she needed to pay for as a single mom. They really get into all of that and how she met Greg and all of that stuff. A little fun story they talk about, for those of you guys who are familiar with Bethenny Frankel and her infamous 10-year divorce, was that Nene actually was invited by Bethenny to an event. Then Nene got invited to something else with Andy Cohen, and she went to Anderson Cooper's house. I think that's what it was. Meanwhile, her two girlfriends that she had brought with her, Bethenny was left to entertain them. They ended up going to a club and seeing Beyonce perform. Then they went to, I don't know if it was a club or something like that. Then they went to another spot where they could not get in. Bethenny cursed the guy out at the door. She emailed the people, the owner of the establishment was able to get in, and that is the night that she ended up meeting her ex, Jason, who she, again, had the 10-year divorce with. Now, she doesn't regret this, obviously, because she has a daughter by him or whatever. So that was all, things work out or whatever. Nene goes all throughout her acting career, early days, and, how she got onto Real Housewives of Atlanta. They talk about on the show, when they get into this real discussion about, reality TV in the world of housewives, Bethenny talks about on the show how you're either getting whacked or you're doing the whacking. Basically, it's kind of like what Dr. Heavenly has talked about in the past about, like, whoever is getting the notes is the person who is going into the scene knowing what's going to happen. If you did not get the notes, you're getting whacked. We pretty much know that at this point. I mean, that has pretty much become the norm for a lot of these shows. For instance, like if you look at somebody like Whitney, right, on Salt Lake City, she's definitely getting the notes from the producers. Giselle is definitely, I would have to wager, is getting the notes. Let me put the alleged badge up here. But these are the characters who usually are stirring the pot, who are bringing up the discussions that are going to be likely controversial, or bringing up the rumors. And then there are the people who are responding to these things and who are walking into the scene. And usually those people have dramatic responses, which is why they usually don't get the notes, right? So anyway, Nene says she felt like the underdog coming in. The rest of the group was married to athletes and people who were very well-to-do. And she felt like, while Greg did well, she really didn't have what they had. So she, at 2 weeks in, decided to just be herself. And that is what took her so far. She talks about as things elevated on the show, they became a lot more competitive. And, they talked about how in season 1, it was a very real show. And somehow along the way around season 4 or 5, it became something different. And, she talked about that a little bit on Carlos King as well. So but it was interesting talking about it with another housewife who has also been in the trenches, sort of in the same way that Nene has. Bethenny talks about a lot of the women taking antidepressants and getting to really low places. Nene talks about the season where she was in all white and everybody was ganging up on her, how low she felt in that moment. They do talk a bit about her divorce from Greg. Then the conversation comes up about whether or not you can sustain a healthy friendship or relationship on reality TV. Now, the relationship, Nene says, has to be very strong, but the friendship, she says, no. She says the production team or the network will always get to the weakest link. She says that for example, the friendship with Marlo that she has now that Marlo was on the show is different. But when they were on the show together, they were better friends. She says that Marlo knew, and she knew that Marlo was not kissing Nene's butt. But because the ladies were putting the idea out there, that it became an insecurity for Marlo, and Marlo began to believe that, which is what caused the rift in their friendship. And then Bethenny went on to talk about how the producers pit people against each other, and Nene does echo that sentiment. Bethenny basically says there's a whiteboard in an office, and they plan out what everyone is going to be doing and who they're going to pit against each other. Now, keep this in mind because that's how we're going to get into this Kandi situation and why Nene ended up leaving the Real Housewives of Atlanta. All right. They both think that the show would do better if they just let the women go and just do what they need to do. Of course, with some direction, but without all this staged confrontation and going against each other. Bethenny said she's seen Nene double down on her frustrations. So let's think back to the season, 12 reunion, I think it was, where Nene and Cynthia were not getting along. And Nene was visibly like she was not giving anything, okay? And Bethenny wondered how Nene was able to maneuver that way. And Nene says, well, she was always going to keep it real and she doesn't like to backpedal. But now she's a different kind of girl. Back then, she was given 100%. Like, whatever it was, that's how she felt, and that's how she was going to give it, you know? But she says now she's learned to pull back and be a 75% girl. Like, I'm not going to give you the full unadulterated version of me. I'm going to give you 75% because that's really all people can handle. Like, people will say they want the unfiltered everything, but really they want the filtered version, right? So I definitely can feel her on that. They talk about the closet scene. Now, this is interesting. Nene says that she doesn't know why it was such a big thing. Now, we get into some tea. The day before, she says Greg was admitted to the hospital and they had just told him that he had cancer and they were doing the buy wig party. She did not want to do it, all right? But because it was an all-cast event, she said they were really pushing her to do it. So she told her producer, listen, we can do the thing, but I just don't want anyone to go into the closet. And she says they promised that no one would go in her closet. Now, I don't know what the deal with the closet was that day, but for whatever reason, she says they told the girls to go into the closet, even after she said not to do that, and they promised her they would not. So when the scene happened, they asked her, you know, after she pulled the man's t-shirt, they asked her if she wanted to take a couple of days off. And she's like, well, I wanted to take some days off beforehand. Now y'all want to ask me if I want to take some days off now that this whole scene has happened like that? And she said they made it into a bigger thing than it actually was. She says she's never had a physical altercation on the show. And she says, even with the camera crew, she says she's seen Teresa push Andy, flip a table, yet her pulling this man's t-shirt was a big deal. When the camera guy, she says the camera guy was laughing the entire time, okay? She feels like when the brown girls do something, it's elevated and they make a huge deal about it. But when the white girls are pulling wigs, throwing glasses, flipping tables, pushing folks, and doing all kinds of things, it's like, oh, I mean, it's fine. It's all good. They gain more popularity. So Bethenny feels like Nene responds too much to things. This is how we know she ends up she watched that Carlos King interview. And, you know, because she references Carlos King's interview when, you know, she's basically saying that Nene responds to too much when asked about the other girls because it doesn't do anything but fuel the fire between the other girls and it makes the other girls more relevant, right? Nene says the problem with that is that when people, you know, sit down with her, they want the full Nene Leakes experience. And so she gives it to them, but she's trying to learn how to pull back. I don't know how that's really working for her. But anyway, let's get into when she decided to leave the show, because this is, to me, was another eye-opener. She says, and let me put the alleged badges up here so you guys can see that. So she says she decided to leave the show when she was given 6 guaranteed episodes, which we already knew. Her thoughts in leaving were that she was being phased out. She was asking why she was being given less and less. And she was being told that she was unhappy. And she was like, how would they know I'm unhappy? But I guess she meant, well, Bethenny surmises they meant that she was reading on unhappy on the screen. And she felt like she was being demoted from something that she started. So all the originals on the other shows, they were white women. They were being given 18 episodes, but she, as a Black woman, was not. So she then says, when she got the call, and this was about season, I guess at the end of season 12, She says, and it was around the Black Lives Matter movement time, she felt like it was an important time, and she was flat out told she needed to sit out that season. Now, this is a little interesting. She was told that she needed to sit out that season, but she also goes on to say that she was not going to take the 6 episodes, not because of finances, but because her husband and her team said to do it. Everybody was telling her to do it because they thought, okay, if she does the 6 episodes, she's obviously going to do amazing, and it's going to turn into 10 or more or whatever. And she says in the end, she made the decision not to take it because she got on the phone with the executives and they wanted her allegedly to come for Kandi. She says that because they'd had some issues, they wanted her to address Kandi. And she says she did not want to do that. She wanted to really focus on what was happening in the moment, which was the Black Lives Matter movement. And I guess maybe that is when she was told to sit out. I'm not necessarily sure. All I know is she reveals that they told her to come for Kandi. So that makes me wonder, was the same thing then told to Marlo? Is that why Marlo has been so seemingly double hockey sticks bent on coming for Kandi? Is it because they feel like the activated Kandi is the Kandi that they need, and certain people should be doing it? I'm not really sure, but it just kind of is interesting to me that they specifically wanted her to come for Kandi. Now, we recall at the end of that season, Nene and Kandi got into it because remember, Kandi was screaming into that computer monitor, telling Nene that she was embedded in her mother effing brain. Okay, remember that? And they had gotten into it about the spinoff things before that and all that good stuff. This was the Giovanna season. I don't know if you guys recall that. So anyway, that was also the season that Nene slammed that laptop shut. So it was asked when was the last time that she spoke to Andy. She says it was 3 years ago. She still has the legal complaint against the network and the production company. She says she echoes the sentiment that she had been bringing forth her issues for years. Basically, she feels like she was being retaliated against for coming to the forefront with issues. She also talks about, again, reiterates this idea that behind the scenes, the girls were complaining about certain things, and she would always be the person that really reached out to the network executives to voice those complaints. But then when it came down time to really get input from the other girls, like they would be on mute, okay? Like the mute challenge, but they would be very active in the text message group, and it would make Nene look basically like she was the only one complaining. Bethenny, this was also interesting to me, and I want to know what you guys think about this. Bethenny says she felt like things began to change in the franchise when Kyle and the rest of the OGs planned Andy's baby shower. Now, apparently they each paid about $5,000 or so. And Bethenny says that she felt like it was going to be this very big kiss the ring thing. Like they were all trying to be his favorite. That is one of the things that is a through line throughout this conversation, is this idea that Andy is sort of like the wizard in the Wizard of Oz. And all of the ladies are set up in this environment to want to feel like they're the favorite, like they're sitting because they want to be sitting next to him at the reunion, or they want to be first on Watch What Happens Live, or they want to be on Watch What Happens Live the most, or they want to be the person that has the direct line to Andy and get invited to his house, or not really his house, but invited out to events and that sort of thing. And so Bethenny says she felt like it was going to be that type of situation. Everybody was going to be trying to be the favorite, and the Beverly Hills girls dancing on the tables, while the new girls were feeling like losers at the losers table and not feeling like it was kind of made to feel like this high school thing where they're all trying to compete for daddy's attention. That's what I gathered from the conversation. That is a through line through their 3-hour discussion. Okay. I just want to let you guys know that they both agree on this. She felt like Bethenny asked if Nene felt like Andy was a good friend, and Nene says no, because she says I've been to my good friend's homes. Okay, I've never been to his house. She says she felt like she could call him. She's hung out with him and partied with him, so they were more than colleagues. But she thought they had a good relationship. But Nene feels like Andy fits in at the top, and he is moving everyone around on the chessboard. Bethenny says she also felt special when she was invited to things by Andy and when she sat next to him at the reunion, and she felt like she wanted his approval. And then she felt, this is when she was on the show, and she reveals how much power he actually has, even though he is not necessarily an employee of the network, but he is still an executive producer of the shows, and he is in some ways the face of the network, right? So Nene says that she always thought Bethenny was his favorite, and Bethenny always felt like Nene was his favorite. But Nene says that she thought that publicly it looked like Bethenny was the favorite, but behind the scenes, allegedly, things were being said to let her know that Bethenny was indeed not the favorite. So this is what I gathered from that statement, okay? And this is me making an assumption and putting my context clues together. It sounds to me like what Nene is inferring is that there might have been some smack talk about Bethenny behind the scenes, but in public, it definitely looked like, because she was invited to the, Watch What Happens Live and all those types of things, that the relationship was good. Bethenny says it occurred to her when she saw herself on a bus in Australia for seasons of Real Housewives of New York City, where on Hayu, where she was only paid the $7,000 for that first season, that is when she realized that she needed to speak out about what was happening in the world of reality TV, along with recognizing what the writers and the actors were doing with the strikes, right? So all of that's happening in tandem, right? So Bethenny then revealed that she only talked with Andy about housewife stuff when they did have conversation, like who was coming and going and if she was ever coming back. She revealed that she doesn't really think that they actually liked each other, but they were just playing the game. And she feels like Andy has some resentment for her, and he was barely a host when they came up at the same time, and she doesn't feel like he likes her at all, and felt like she'd finally open her mouth and say something because he was the only person she was protecting this whole time, but he was not protecting her. So what she means by that is, what she was saying was, because Nene's like, hello, okay, is this thing on? Hello, all right. Nene reveals that she felt the same way, and that she doesn't ever really feel like he really liked her either. So basically, what they're trying to say here, from what I'm gathering, is that it seems like they are saying that he recognized their value to the network, right? Especially Nene being Nene and Bethenny being Bethenny, and what they were to each of their respective franchises. For instance, Bethenny speaks, it makes news. Nene speaks, it makes the news. More news, more press, more eyes on the show. So I'm assuming what they're referring to is that what he really, again, I'm basing this on what they're saying, is that he really didn't like them, but he knew that he needed to keep them around and keep them happy because they were making money for the network. That is what I gathered, okay, that they're saying. Okay, listen to the interview. Again, I'm writing these things down verbatim. I'm giving you the notes, so you ain't got to listen to the whole 3 hours if you ain't got 3 hours. But if you got 30 minutes, you can listen to it here, okay? But I will place the link in the description for the 2-part interview, so you guys can hear it for yourself and determine for yourself if what I'm saying is what they are saying. And then I want you to tell me what you think about what I'm saying, okay? Bethenny feels like he's protected. Like, she feels like he can ask very inappropriate questions of the guests, and they will sit there and take it because they want to promote whatever they're doing, and they want to be on the show, and they will take the backlash for whatever they say on the show. but he will never get any backlash for anything inappropriate that he says or does on the show. This is what she says, okay? They talk about Nene, burning the house down and taking legal action and, the consequences of, that and what that has meant for her and the network not protecting her. Nene says she still feels alone in this whole reality reckoning thing, even though she, sees that Bethenny is doing a lot of work to get out in front of this thing. Bethenny talks about a potential show that she had presented or pitched for for her and Nene, called Ebony and Ivory. She called two production companies with connections to Bravo. They said they can't touch it because she's suing, right? And they apparently called an agency and they said they can't touch it because of the legal action that Nene had going on. I guess some of that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like, how would you work that when someone is potentially suing or taking some type of legal action or has a legal complaint against the network that you're trying to work with? But Bethenny was trying to pitch the show basically where she and Bethenny, Nene and Bethenny would go around the country and experience these different places. Some really, I guess, some places that, felt like super white, and then some places that, in the South and stuff like that. It was just like a show where the two of them, coming from their two different worlds, and, a black woman and a white woman, were going to be doing this road trip. But to me, that sounds very similar to the show that Nene was supposed to be doing with Kim. Does it not? I mean, is that not a similar thing? And that didn't work out either? I don't know. Anyway, Nene gives another example about how Vicki Gunvalson was supposed to be on the first season of Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip, which we did not know. Vicki allegedly spoke to an attorney and thinking that she wanted to file a lawsuit. Nene was allegedly also on the phone, or at least heard the phone call. And now all of a sudden, I guess maybe the lawsuit never went through. Vicki is back on the show on Real Housewives of Orange County. She's still working. No, she's not back in any full-time capacity. But she's also on Ultimate Girls Trip. She says, Vicki's back working, whereas they never wanted to talk to Nene about anything. And she felt like they were like, F that black B. These are her words. All right. She says the world didn't know about this thing that Vicki had going on with the network, but she knew. And now Nene is back over there. She says Teresa can go to prison and they'll wait for her to come back. The black girls are treated differently while the white women go on fabulous trips, and the black girls are always stuck in Sprinter vans. Bethenny wonders what Nene would want or say if they called her. Nene says that she would want to meet face to face and want fair treatment. But Bethenny is like, well, how do you want fair treatment? What does it look like if you don't work there now? Which I thought was a valid question. She says, so she asked, would you want to work with them? And Nene says she can't say that she would. So Bethenny then wonders, would she want fair compensation for lost wages? And Nene on the podcast will not say exactly what it is that she wants, but she can say that she wants a union. So I'm assuming it's probably what Bethenny is saying and a little and more, but I can't really put my finger on what that more could be. If you work in the as an attorney, I mean, what would you think that she could be wanting that she could not speak about? I mean, I'd be curious. I'm assuming her lawyers have told her not to speak on that aspect of it, and I'm sure that's the right thing to do, but I'm just curious because it's been brought up. Apparently, Bethenny has said that the SAG-AFTRA organization has said that they would be backing a reality union. Nene's thoughts on the show today, Real Housewives of Atlanta, is, again, she doesn't watch. She watches the IG clips. It's changed a lot. They look like they're suffering. They don't look like housewives. It's boring. Who are these women? Why are they on the show? They compare it to Days of Our Lives and say it's tragic and a dinosaur. Nene says they don't want women on the show who are big and popular, and they leave the girls who are boring and mediocre, and they pushed off all the popular girls. Nene, I guess, wants to do more acting. And again, that was something that she had also referenced with Carlos King. She talks a little bit about, I think, there's been more of a concern about money since she hasn't been able to work as much. But she says that she was lucky to have invested in some great things to keep her going. I thought that was I mean, it's a really revealing interview. And Nene talks, and they talk about how Nene really was unsure about doing this interview because she felt like more doors may close as a result of her doing this. And in light of what we know now, or what's happening, or what's being revealed, I can definitely understand it. And Bethenny says she recognized that Nene definitely did not seem like herself when they talked about doing this, and she was unsure if she should do it. They talk about the Mount Rushmore of housewives, and Nene feels like it's Bethenny, Nene, Vicky, and Teresa. Bethenny does acknowledge that with them trying to pitch that show with her and Nene, that she kept hitting brick walls and she wasn't understanding why, even though she knew about the litigation, but she still felt like there was something. She does feel what Nene is feeling. She sees what Nene's experiencing to a certain degree. But she also talks about how, you know, they're no longer controlled by anybody. In this day and age, you know, Bethenny says Nene can put out her own content, which is, again, what I've been saying all along. I don't believe that you need the backing of iHeart just to do a podcast. Now, granted, is it great? Absolutely. I'm sure it is. But there's also ways that Nene can also do this on her own. And I do feel like it's just a matter of doing it. Like, and I think for Nene, I think what I wonder is, does Nene not, I mean, I feel like she should have the infrastructure around her. I mean, I'm sure she knows plenty of great podcasters or people who are in the space who can help really set her up for success with this. And I feel like there's a blueprint out there that you can see. A lot of people are doing amazing with doing, you know, these live in-person interviews. And even the interviews that she's done herself, I mean, have garnered plenty of views. So I feel like there's no, at this point in my mind, why there's no excuse why she wouldn't just go out here and do it on her own. Bethenny tells her that she should have a podcast. You know, Nene was like, well, I've never been allowed to do that. People keep taking things away. And Bethenny tells her, you've been sitting in the middle. And if you really want to get out here and make some waves, you have got to jump into the big waves. And Nene admits that she's been beating herself up about, you know, she was beating herself up about coming to the interview, but she was glad that she did. Again, it's a very, very interesting 3-hour conversation. I think the first part was maybe like an hour or so. The second part, I think it was an hour and 40 minutes, I believe. I mean, ads here and there, but you know, you can kind of skip past those as you please. I suggest you take a listen to it. It was very good. I think it was very revealing. And it gave me some details that I didn't know that I tried to give you guys today. So again, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below, especially about some of the more revealing aspects of this, like the whole Kandi situation. I was really, really shocked by. With that being said, I will catch you all in the next video.
So, Desiree Davenport, what are you hoping to accomplish with this show?
Honestly, I've lost everything in the most horrible way possible. And listen, I want it all back. I'm willing to build it piece by piece, and I mean brick by brick.
Oh, honey, she is done. I bet you a Burke and she doesn't last all season with us. Just watch.
I'm Misha Hill, and I'd like to consider myself the matriarch of this dynamic group of ladies. I mean, someone has to keep them under control.
I'm Davita Delaney.
I mean, I think I could teach these ladies a thing or two about how to get and keep a good man.
They said she was a gold digger. She ain't do that for me. I'm just really looking forward to being surrounded by other empowering bosses.
Yes, I know exactly what she's doing. And if she keep playing in my face, I'm gonna have to let her off her dirty little secrets just like she did to me. And I'm not playing.
Let's get this straight. If I brought you into this circle, I just as easily can take you out. She ain't running nothing over here, okay? She needs to be worried about running that household and worried about why that husband of hers is never at home.
Oh, hell.
Ooh, child, this is about to be a mess.
Oh my God, I hate mess. What in the world did I get myself into?